What do you make about the way they match up against Tampa? And I get it that there's no Steven Stamkos, and I get that there's no Victor Hedman that was in that lineup last night. But do you like what you see when the Leafs play the Lightning, perhaps more so than when you see them play the Bruins?
No.
Doesn't matter?
Well, they're different. They're a little bit different, but Freddie Anderson, his last 2 games, has given up 1 goal in regulation. He was excellent in L.A. in the shootout loss.
Yes.
He was excellent last night. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit more, but I mean, the first period, I mean, it was nice. He had a nice relaxing time at that end of the ice for the first 20 minutes as the Leafs were dominant. I mean, as dominant as maybe you've seen them all this season. I mean, they just controlled the game in every single regard, and Vasilevsky was every bit as good. But then the second period and the third period, Freddie Anderson had to be really, really good because of the way the Toronto Maple Leafs treat defense. And, so you start to look at goaltending, and Vasilevsky to me is so good. But if Freddie Anderson just gives them that goaltending, I give a slight edge to Tampa Bay, but it's not one that's a difference maker. The blue line is clearly in Tampa Bay's favor with Victor Hedman in the lineup. And, I just don't see, Toronto's defense being able to go there. And then you start to look at the skill. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning are the highest scoring team in the league. So they got the firepower up front, but it's more how you get deeper into their forward group where they have a big advantage over Toronto. Now, does it mean that Toronto's an overwhelming or an underwhelming underdog? No, but I just think if you just look at it in terms of what each team has and where they match up, that Tampa Bay still has the edge in their favor. Now you got to play the games, right? You got to try to find a way to make the other team uncomfortable, like the Columbus Blue Jackets did last year with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and work the game to your favor. And that's what playoff hockey is about. The great line is, you got to play one style of game. You need a certain style of game to make the playoffs. You need a different style of game to win in the playoffs, right?
The Leafs are still trying to figure out what style they're trying to play.
But isn't that true, though, about the playoffs? John McDonough, the president and CEO of the Chicago Blackhawks, said, he was involved with the Chicago Cubs for years, and he said the NHL playoffs are like no other sport. That you got to be able to play and adapt in so many different ways to have success in the playoffs that the regular season doesn't force you into, right? And yet you have a great regular season like Tampa Bay, out in 4 games, they're bums. They're no good, right? So that's where you look at it. But you play the games and you try to take your strengths and put it in there. But when I look at each team and how their team composition is, I think Tampa Bay has the edge.
So why do you think that is? Like at first glance, I would say the NHL playoffs are different because, I mean, you're playing the same team, every other night. So you get to know their tendencies. It becomes more of a chess match. You're trying to adjust. The coaches, I think, in that sense, get a little bit more involved, maybe, that you could argue in the regular season. The players themselves, do they turn up a certain kind of intensity, right? Like maybe they just find that extra gear. There's also the good old, the refs put the whistles away come playoff time. Certain things that get called in regular season don't get called in the playoffs. I mean, is that all true? Is that why NHL playoffs are different? Because I know a lot of people get upset at that because they say, well, why should it be? You build your team for an 82-game season, but really it gets decided in 4 games where it seems like the rules change?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the rules change. I mean, there's everything you said. I guess you could weight it accordingly and say some of that might happen. But in the playoffs, and people say, oh, they put away their whistles. And I'll just address this one. The playoffs, all of a sudden you've eliminated 15 teams. 16 teams now. Now you're into the cream of the NHL. And the game is so detailed, and it relies on details. So the understanding with the intensity that goes with it, no question, everybody realizes the stakes and the intensity goes up. So that's absolutely true. But then the details, you can't make mistakes. And these teams are tighter in terms of where they're at level-wise. So it's not about like one team is overwhelmingly better than another team, but who dials into the details, who now has the discipline to just continue to play a certain way. We're not going to beat ourselves. Wayne Gretzky said, he goes, in the regular season, I used to be able to make plays at the blue line. When I got to the playoffs, I knew I had to not make those same plays. So that adjustment of how you play becomes a big part of it. And it's every shift. Every shift matters. And so I think that's what ends up happening. And, it's hard, and people don't play they don't play as much in the middle of the ice. So you try to play the game outside the dots where you're not as dangerous, and you force teams to try to outside of their strength. So you got to find a way to play inside, and it's hard. Teams don't let you do it. So I think it's all those things, Andy, to different degrees and at different times. But I think all in all, it requires a really, really serious discipline to be successful in the playoffs. I think discipline is the word I would use more than anything. And yeah, there's certain styles that you're going to be confronted with that you're going to have to find a way to either going to succumb to them, or you're going to find a way to overcome them.